Friday, the Scarlet Faithful, Aaron Brightman here previewing Rutgers, Wisconsin, Saturday at noon at the Rack. Corey Provis and Stephen Bardo on the call for the Big Ten Network. And a raucous crowd at the Rack is expected. Should be a real rock fight once again. These two programs have had some great battles of late. Rutgers winning in Madison by 1 point last year. And it's a big game for both teams. Rutgers now 2 wins in a row on the road, coming from behind in both at Michigan, at Maryland. Wisconsin, after a tremendous start to the season, was 8-1 in conference play, have lost 3 in a row at Nebraska in overtime, at home to Purdue, and then got upset at Michigan on Wednesday night. They came directly to Piscataway, per my guest, who I'm excited to have on, Wisconsin podcaster Kedrick Stumbris, who really gives some great insight on the Badgers and the current state of things. So I want to welcome him in first, and then I'm going to talk about some additional keys and things that I'm looking for in this game. Kedrick Stumbris, who has a podcast for Wisconsin, Sconnie 6-Pack. Kedrick, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Aaron. Really, really excited to talk about this rock fight of a matchup.
Absolutely. Certainly did not expect Wisconsin to be visiting the Rack on Saturday, coming on into it with a 3-game losing streak, a surprising loss at Michigan on Wednesday night. First off, just wanted to ask, I guess, in terms of, the Badgers have been so impressive for most of this season. Has there anything been in particular that's changed over the last week or so? Did you see this coming? Was it kind of, were they playing above their heads a little bit? What are your kind of overall thoughts of the current state of this team?
So I think Wisconsin was put into one of the worst spots you can be in college basketball from a scheduling perspective, where it's one of the worst spots, but it happens in college basketball, basically to teams every season, where you go in, you lose a game you're supposed to win, and then the very next time you go out, you're supposed to play a game you're supposed to lose. They go out and they choke it up at Nebraska, and then they have to play Purdue on Sunday. Well, that's not great. Unfortunately, then it's turned to just stacking this other loss with Michigan that I think is unfortunate. But all in, I think it comes from a bit of a slump with Wisconsin's starting center right now, and Steven Crowell, who didn't play very great at Nebraska. He and Wisconsin's starting power forward, Tyler Wall, in the front court combined for 7 shot attempts at Nebraska. And then Steven Crowell got into foul trouble early against Purdue. He had 4 fouls in that game. 2 of those weren't even committed against Zach Edey. I would have preferred a starting center save his fouls to foul Zach Edey a little bit more. And then against Michigan, Steven Crowell plays only 19 minutes because he picked up his 3rd foul with 17:46 to go in the second half. He picked up his 4th foul with just over 11 and a half minutes to go in regulation. Crowell only played 19 minutes, and he's a big part of what Wisconsin does. It was only the second time in a Big Ten game since December of 2021 that he had played 19 or fewer minutes. It's astonishing. And Wisconsin just doesn't have a ton of front court depth to deal with something like that. And they're also dealing with a little bit of depth issues at point guard with one of their backup point guard pieces got injured against Indiana last month. So they're having a little bit of depth issues, adding some poor 3-point shooting here and there in bad situations. They didn't make a 3 in the second half against Purdue. They only made their first 3 in the second half against Michigan on Wednesday with under 5 minutes to go. And you have kind of a precipitation of things, jumbling into each other, leading to the train kind of falling apart on the tracks here.
Yeah, I noticed that in terms of I was looking at trends, and they've struggled from 3 the last 3 games. Is it anything that opposing defenses are doing differently? Is it just a matter of closing out, or is it just kind of like you kind of hinted at, a little bit of a cold streak from deep?
This hasn't been the best 3-point shooting team all year for Wisconsin, although they hit some, and a really hot week from Max Klesmit, their starting 2 guard, kind of hid some of those things. But Wisconsin's starting point guard, Chucky Hepburn, is having the worst 3-point shooting year of his career. And that's kind of reared its ugly head a little bit. And then AJ Storr had, a bad 3-point shooting night. I think he went 0 for 4 against Purdue. Connor Essegian, who was a starter on this team last year, now coming off the bench, he also went 0 for 4 from 3 against Purdue. Purdue defends the perimeter very well, so there is something into that. But overall, this just hasn't been a great 3-point shooting team right now. And you add that in with a little bit of a cold streak, I think, and you get this.
I was definitely one that was kind of high on Wisconsin coming in, just knowing, the stability that they had with this roster, a little bit of a unicorn in the Big Ten with so many returning key pieces from last season. AJ Storr has been a great addition. Still can't believe St. John's let him leave. How important has he been? I feel like he gives this team a little bit of a different dynamic than they've had in the past. How key has he been in the resurgence of this team up until this last week or so?
Yeah, and there are a lot of folks in Wisconsin's fan base who like to say Greg Gard can't recruit, but he did beat out Rick Pitino for AJ Storr, and I'll point that out until the day I die, basically. But I think the core is really good, and college basketball is fickle in this way, where after the 2020 season, where that team didn't get a tournament, Wisconsin kind of roared back the Big Ten standings to win the league that year. They brought that whole core back, and then that core got 4 games worse in the Big Ten. They lost 5 of the last 6 that season. So it is, a little bit here and there. Sometimes you return everybody and things are good. Sometimes you return everybody and things aren't so good. This year, you return everybody and things have gotten quite a bit better. Last year's Wisconsin team just didn't have a go-to scorer, really. And AJ Storr has really unlocked that scoring punch for as good as that team last year was on the defensive end. They've regressed a little bit this year in that sense, but mostly it's AJ Storr has unlocked a scoring punch that this team really desperately needed last year to an already really solid roster. Add in some other young pieces that Wisconsin has gotten. Nolan Winter, who is Stephen Crowell's backup. He is a true freshman. He plays a ton of minutes. John Blackwell, who also plays on the wing for Wisconsin. He's a true freshman. He plays a ton of minutes. They had a solid core already, but brought in some players that are making significant differences without really losing anybody from last year's roster, which has turned into, a team that for a minute there looked like it could have competed for the Big Ten title.
Yeah. And, seasons have peaks and valleys. And, I think both teams are in a little bit of a different position right now, with Rutgers finally getting a little bit of momentum. But one thing that stands out about Wisconsin is how good they are in terms of on the glass, in terms of limiting opponents to second chance opportunities. It's funny because defensively, their overall efficiency is really high, but they're kind of average or even below in a lot of categories, including, allowing teams from behind the arc. I know there's a little bit of luck there, but how much is it just the philosophy of crashing the boards and kind of taking your chances with teams shooting from 3? And how important has that been towards their success?
There definitely is a little bit of luck involved there. There was a remark made by Greg Gard in his midweek media availability last week, actually, before they went to Nebraska, where he was asked about his team's maybe lackluster performance at defending the 3. And he asked, I don't remember which reporter asked, but asked, well, what do you mean, like, not defending the 3 very well? And he said, well, because the shooting percentage is high. And Greg Gard said, well, sometimes we allow teams to shoot more 3s and dare them to make them. Sometimes we do want to chase them off the perimeter. So there is some of that built into that, but there is, I think, a larger question of they really do try to protect the paint. I think that's just a big part of what Gard wants to do defensively. If you look at last night, or whichever day this goes out, Wednesday, if you look at Wednesday's game against Michigan, Greg Gard said coming out of halftime that he wanted his team to defend the paint better. They did that a little bit better in the second half. They got beat up a little bit on dribble penetration, but Wisconsin outscored Michigan 22-6 in the second half in paint points. I think it just shows the way they want to defend the interior, and they're willing to give up some 3s sometimes at the expense of that. But, some of these games where teams get lucky, shooting some of these 3s, I think Wisconsin probably wants a little bit of that back. But overall, this is a solid rebounding team. Even when Stephen Crowell, who I said has been slumping a little bit, even when he's not getting up shots, he's still grabbing a ton of rebounds. Tyler Wall had 6 offensive rebounds against Purdue of all teams earlier this week. So Wisconsin on the boards is force to be reckoned with, and something that they can always go back to kind of as their calling card to keep them in games as things have gone on this season.
So from your perspective, obviously Wisconsin, 3-game losing streak, heading to the rack. How do you look at this team's matching up together, and what are the keys from your perspective for Wisconsin to get off the schneid and get back in the win column?
Well, it should be a gross defensive matchup, as it seems that this matchup always is. Wisconsin, it can protect the paint when it needs to, and that should stall Rutgers a little bit. But I think overall, like, Wisconsin is going to be challenged to not settle for jump shots. I think that's a tough thing to do against Clifford Amori, of course. I think AJ Storr is going to be challenged by some of this really tough on-ball defense that Rutgers plays. I think this is game Wisconsin can win if they do things the way that Greg Gard wants them to do. If they really try to challenge that Rutgers interior led by Amore and get to the hoop. Wisconsin outscored Purdue of all teams in the paint earlier this week, right? Like, Wisconsin can do it. It's a question of getting efficient shots, doing what they need to. I think it'll be as slow paced as this Wisconsin team is, right? Wisconsin's a slow paced, but really efficient offense against a stalwart Rutgers defense. I can't see any other way than this coming down to the final 2-3 minutes, just because of the way points I expect to be at a premium in this one. But if Wisconsin really tries to get on the inside, doesn't settle for mid-range shots, hits a couple of threes that have been hard for them to come by lately, I think that's probably the recipe for them to win, which I know is kind of a boring answer of, oh, you just have to play good basketball. But right now, Wisconsin hasn't been playing good basketball. And when they've played good basketball, they've been able to win a lot of games. So if they can go out and play the way that they want to, they're going to stand a chance. But I think Rutgers defense is going to make this a toss-up probably regardless.
Yeah, one thing that makes me nervous, and you can get Rutgers fans to twitch, is when you bring up the free throw line. Wisconsin, one of the best teams in the country, top 25 at 77% as a team. But I do wonder also, with the short rest, playing Wednesday night, now back on the road, a noon start Eastern time on Saturday, how much that will be an impact. Any thoughts there, just in terms of the short rest? Is it almost maybe counter in terms of a positive to have a chance to kind of, get that bad taste out of their mouth right away?
Yeah, I like that point, and I think there's going to be some of that in there. I think that, Greg Gard and Steve Peichel, from my understanding, have a great deal of respect for one another. And I don't think Greg Gard's going to take this matchup lightly whatsoever. I think one thing Wisconsin has, although it's a short rest game, Wisconsin is not going back to Madison this week. They're going straight from Ann Arbor and Michigan, going right out to Piscataway. So there isn't a ton of this back and forth that they're having to do this week, which is probably a little bit better for them. Most of the players that were on this team last year that lost at Rutgers are still on the team. I think those two things combined will put it all together for them. And short rest might come into play here, but it's not something I'm outright worried about. You're gonna have to play on short rest at some point in time every season, and if this team can respond better than it did playing at Michigan, I guess that's better.
That's great insight about them not going back to Madison. Obviously, a lot of hotel meals in their present right now, but that is a good point to note, and that's also a great point. Also, with the veterans on this team, Rutgers, one of their best wins last year, and few without Mag was that 1 point win in Madison down to the wire, which certainly was a tough one for Wisconsin and hurt their tournament chances at the time. So certainly they will look for payback. Any other last thoughts in terms of this matchup on Saturday?
I think this is just, in a weird way, a game that I'm really excited to watch. I don't think Wisconsin hasn't gotten into any of these, tough. They haven't been in a spot where they've really, really had to respond to adversity yet this season. They had a tough loss against Providence early in the year, where they kind of no-showed back in November, and they had to respond to that, but not in the middle of Big Ten play yet. Obviously, you had a chance to do that on Wednesday against Michigan, and it would have been a better spot to do it, because I think Michigan is not as good of a team as Rutgers is. Now, going into this matchup, I think you're going to be able to learn a lot about Wisconsin in this game. And for your listeners, I think that a win over this Wisconsin team could tell you a lot about what this Rutgers team has in its bag and what it can do for the next month and change moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge opportunity for Rutgers on Saturday. Kedrick Stumbris of Sconnie 6-pack. Check him out. And we did a little joint podcast here, so I'll be on your podcast as well, and we'll tweet that out. But for Wisconsin coverage, check him out. And thank you so much for all your great insight and for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
All right, really appreciate Kedrick Stumbris' insight on Wisconsin basketball. Sconnie 6-pack. Definitely check out their podcast. So, few keys in this game. Obviously, there was some of which we talked about. Obviously, the offensive glass. Rutgers has been very successful there lately. Wisconsin, number 11 nationally in terms of efficiency on the defensive end, preventing opponents on the offensive glass. So that's going to be a huge key in this game. They're also very good on offensive glass. So if Rutgers can't generate a lot of second chance points on offensive rebounds, that's certainly something they're going to have to make up for. So where can they make up for it? Two areas in particular in terms of 3-point range. Wisconsin is not good at defending the three. They are 298th in terms of opponents shooting 35.7% from behind the arc. Part of that is how they sag defensively. And they really kind of give it, and Kedrick spoke about this a little bit in terms of allowing opponents to shoot the three a little bit. I have a feeling they will let Rutgers do that. Obviously, Rutgers is one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. However, with the addition of Jeremiah Williams and Derek Simpson, I think a key here is their ability to, the way they've been very active on the perimeter and finding lanes to drive, getting to the rim, getting shots. If they can do that as consistently as they've done in the last two games, that's going to get them to the foul line more. That's something that has to happen in this game. Wisconsin, in terms of allowing free throws, they're really good. They're on average in terms of opponents getting to the line. But Rutgers has to get to the line to generate some points in this game. They've been shooting better from the foul line, but they haven't been getting there enough at home. You need to get there 25 times, I think, in this game, especially with the second chance points being a concern. But also, if you have Williams and Simpson driving consistently, whether it's off a high ball screen or just beating their man, you're going to have some open kickouts from three. And that's where Gavin Griffiths comes into play. That's where Andre Hyatt comes into play. Going to have to hit some shots this game. I don't want to see them settle for that mid-range pull-up unless, like Derek's been really good at the crossover, generating a little bit of space, but contested mid-range is not the way to go in this game. The physicality of Rutgers, I think, can be a problem for Wisconsin in this game. And obviously Cliff, they really need him to step up in this game. Stephen Kraut, is a big guy, but Cliff has the ability to, I think, physically impose as well in this game. Obviously, Mawat Mag has been really key on the offensive end, always is huge on the defensive end. But I think, you're playing at the rack. Rutgers has to reestablish home court advantage. They're 2-6 in their last 8 games at home in Big Ten play, dating back to last year. They lost the last 3. They're 2-3 this season. They lost their last 2. You have a homestand now with Wisconsin, who's obviously very good despite this losing streak. They're a very good team. AJ Storr is a problem. I think Mawat Mag is going to get his assignment. Chucky Hepburn, you figure JaMychal Davis and probably Derek Simpson rotate a little bit. Maybe Jeremiah plays AJ Storr a little bit too. Tyler Wall is a very solid player for Wisconsin. They're a good 3-point shooting team. But Rutgers needs to utilize the home crowd, be physical, work Wisconsin, not allow any easy buckets. And both teams are going to have long possessions, I think. The Rutgers plays with a much faster tempo. If they can get out in transition, I think they just need to utilize their physicality, their athleticism. I think their lateral quickness could be a problem for Wisconsin. And I just think that, the way they've been playing offensively, they've been much more connected. They've played a lot more purpose. Their spacing has been a lot better. And it really comes down to Jeremiah and Derek, just, whether it's the horn set or just their ability to beat their man off the dribble. I mean, Jeremiah's doing a lot of just beating his man off the dribble and getting to the rim. He utilizes his body really well. He's under control. He can finish. And there's been dump offs for Cliff on those drives. So Rutgers just has to really kind of continue to do what they're doing. They shot 50% from the floor in the second half against Maryland, which is, an elite defense. So there's some hope here. And I think, again, kick out threes are going to be there, transition threes on the trailer. This is a game that Rutgers has a lot of confidence coming in. Wisconsin, has lost 3 in a row. They're a mentally tough team. They're a veteran team. They're not going to be intimidated, but I do think that the mental strain of that losing streak, Rutgers is so good at delivering body blows throughout the game. They can't fall behind early like they have been. If they can trade baskets for a while and just keep things close at the half, I think they'll have all the momentum in the world in the second half. Pikel's just great at adjustments. The way he's been executing the rotation, the way he's been changing things up defensively, the way the team has responded to it. There's a lot to like going into this matchup. But like I said, Wisconsin also is tremendous from the foul line, 77.1%, 23rd nationally. They don't block a ton of shots. They're not great in the interior in terms of rim defending. 3-pointers, that really where their defensive efficiency comes in is their ability to limit opponents on the board. So that is so much of what they do defensively in limiting one-shot possessions. So Rutgers has obviously shot selection, but they need to get to the rim. They need to make it count. They need to get to the line. They need to draw contact. And they need to hit some open threes. Stay away from the mid-range. Go drive with intent. And Cliff's got to operate in space. And they've been so active in terms of him as a screener. You want to see more of that. Can they get some pen downs for, even guys like Noah, Gavin, and Andre to generate some open threes? I think that, what Wisconsin wants you to do is shoot long twos. That's what they're going to want them to do, or take those elbow jumpers. And unless it's open, Rutgers is going to be most effective, getting to the rim. They've taken a lot more layup attempts in the last 2 games, in the high 20s, where they were in the, low to mid to high teens. But again, they need to get more free throws. Obviously, playing with a lead late will help with that. I just think that's a huge advantage for Rutgers. If they can have a lead late in the game, the last 2-3 minutes of the game, with Derek Simpson, with Noah Fernandez, with Andre Hyatt, Jeremiah Williams has been solid. That's a team that, Mag has been better from the line. I mean, they've shown an ability to ice games from the line. And, they've been confident down the stretch of games. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a rough fight. If it's in the high 60s, I'd be shocked. It's probably going to be in the mid to low 60s, to high 50s. And, obviously protecting the basketball. But Rutgers just has to continue to believe in what's in how they're playing and sticking together on both ends of the floor. It's just the way they communicate now on the floor has been a ton better, so much better. I think that just in terms of the dynamic of this team, the confidence they're playing with, and the starting 5 has just been a lot more connected and contributing so much more so. You're going to need some off your bench in this game, I think, with Hyatt and Griffiths. They're going to need some threes. But this is a winnable game. This is a game, these next 2 games, this is a season-changing potential of a homestand. If you can win these 2 games, all of a sudden the perception changes. These are 2 really good teams, top half Big Ten teams, but winnable games at home. And if you can do that, you're knocking on the 500 door, and all of a sudden it's a different season. So I really hope they can build up some momentum here. This team has really worked hard in terms of staying focused, buying into what Pikel has preaching to them. And this is just a prime opportunity on Saturday. It's very exciting. The crowd should be amazing. And, I think the more that you can deliver body blows, like I was talking about on the defensive end, they have to be smart offensively, though. They can't, go 5, 6, 7 possessions with one shot, because they have to take smart shots, and they have to go strong to the rim. I think that this is a game. Wisconsin. This is their second game in 3.5 days. Their third game in a week. They could have some tired legs there in the second half. They've had slept in hotels for 4 days, room service, whatever. They're going to miss that home cooking, and hopefully Rutgers, can just be relentless on defensively, as they have the ability to be. I think you'll see a little bit of pressing in this game, and just have to play 40 minutes. And I think that this is a game they absolutely could win. What does Kim Pom say? Just in terms of the matchup, Wisconsin's favorite, projected to win by 6, 70% chance to win. But I think you throw that out the window with the way Rutgers is right now with Jeremiah Williams. They're obviously a different team. Watt Mag has started to, really excel once again on the offensive end. Egbole has given them a little bit. I think, this is a game that you go at Stephen Crowell, their center. Rutgers just has to be the aggressor. They have to really take it to Wisconsin and put them in pressure situations and not allow for any easy baskets. And if they do that, I really think they can win this game. So thanks for watching once again the Scarlet Faithful podcast. We'll see what happens. I'll be back for a rapid recap or rapid reaction after the Wisconsin game, noon on Saturday, BTN, and have a great weekend.